This is Mark Schulman, and you are so fortunate because you are listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast. So enjoy every second of it.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Mark Schulman,
former touring drummer for
Pink,
Cher,
and Foreigner.
Yeah, and he's also a corporate speaker now, motivational speaker.
Yeah.
So fantastic person, fantastic interview. Let's get right to it.
All right, good night.
Good night. All right, Mark, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Mark, this is Jeff. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, great to meet you guys. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, it's a total honor to have you on tonight, and you have like one of the best publicists ever to work with. So give her a big thanks for us. But let's get right into this. In 2022, you retired as the touring drummer for Pink, the Pink Band, to focus in on your business as a on-stage and virtual motivational keynote speaker. Can you talk a little bit more about the transition from full-time touring drummer of some of the biggest acts in the world to that of a full-time motivational speaker?
Absolutely. Well, you know what? It all started when I did my first drum clinic in 1991.
Okay.
And my parents were both professors. And I got on stage, I was scared to death. I'd never done a drum clinic, and by the end, I'm like, I really like this. I feel comfortable up here, and I feel like I'm reasonably articulate. I can communicate. I can tell stories. And then I did about 1,000 drum clinics. And then it was my dear old friend, the late great Dom Famularo. We were doing a clinic tour together, and Don said that he had gotten hired to do a corporate gig because a gentleman was there with his son, and the guy comes up and said, I love what you do. Can you come to my corporation and just do what you do? It's so motivating. He said, I was thinking I have about $7,000. Is that okay? You know, we're making like $500 doing drum clinics and stuff. And so ever since Dom told me that, I'm thinking, you know, I would love to get into that because I have so much experience and I'm very philosophical, and I started to realize that when I was doing my drum clinics for drummers, which is such a microcosm of the population really, and you know, some colleges and some, you know, musicians, I thought people were resonating more with the stories and the success coaching than the drumming. And then at a point I realized, you know, if I really did my research and understood what the corporate and collegiate markets wanted, I could take this basic format and transfer it to transfer to a much, much larger population and be able to inspire and engage and educate, and of course, entertain folks in other contexts. So I did, and I ended up studying with 2 speaking coaches, an acting coach, a director, a storyteller, and I still play drums. I call it a rock show disguised as a keynote because I won't do anything without my drums. I've done a couple without my drums, and won't work. I play medleys. I play a Billy Idol medley, a Pink medley, a Cher medley, a Foreigner medley, and every bit of drumming and every story has content attached to it that the audience can take away. So the whole idea is that I will have meetings with the particular corporation or organization or the association and find out what it is they're looking for, what their challenges are, what they'd like to get out of the presentations. And then I customize an already very well manicured script, so to speak, around their event. And I've had such enormous success that I realized it's a higher level of purpose for me. I talk about, transforming passion into purpose, because a lot of people talk about passion, but passion is fleeting. When you find the only way to really extend your passion is to attach purpose to it. And then the passion feeds the purpose, and the purpose feeds the passion. And I realized this is another level of purpose. This is like my new platform, my new soapbox. After touring for 32 years, and I played with some of the greatest artists, and I couldn't be more grateful about that. And so I use them as models for success. Pink and Cher and Billy Idol and Foreigner. So all the stories I tell have to do with myself, but I really talk about these artists and the inspiration that they've given me because I studied them, because there's no accident to success. And so I still play drums. I do have an all-star band. So sometimes I'll do a speech during the day and then the all-star band plays at night. I still do sessions. I'm just not a committed full-time touring musician anymore because I believe that speaking is just a greater form of communication, a more evolved. It's like evolution for me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, let's just talk. I know we're on the subject of the speaking, but you also talked about your band. Do you guys play outside of the speaking events, or where can people see your band?
Oh yeah, I mean we'll play anywhere. Well, we're pretty expensive. It's an all-star band. It's people like me, that play with, established artists. So we usually do corporate events. We'll do, some high-end weddings. We got hired to play for this billionaire IT guy who had his wedding in Anguilla. And it was at the tail end of COVID. And it was a half rock and half country band. So we hired a bunch of Nashville musicians, and they wanted every musician to have a sub. So if anybody landed and tested positive, they would immediately quarantine, and we would need to fly out the sub. So we were rehearsing a second band at the same time as the primary band, Wow. So it was wild. So they were sort of like rehearsing, not in our monitors, but in their own monitors with us. So they were learning everything and all the arrangements. And then the irony is we landed and they they didn't really care. Like Anguilla was like, the test was like a little flick in the nose. And so, a lot of musicians got paid and it was fun. And we spent 4 days in Anguilla, which is one of the most gorgeous places. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, to bring this back to your motivational speaking, talk about the satisfaction level of I guess, speaking to a large group of people opposed to that of performing like in a band such as Pink or Cher, Billy Idol. Anything. Do you have the same satisfaction at the end that you did playing live or public speaking? Is there this similar satisfaction?
It's a greater satisfaction to me now.
Nice.
Because I realized that I mean all I wanted to do was play drums on the big stage. That's all I wanted to do from the earliest age. I mean, I believe drums chose me. Like I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan when I was 2, and I saw Ringo and I saw the Screaming Girls. I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
And then drums were too loud, so my brother was playing violin, and my mother's like, can't you play a nice instrument like your brother Randy? So I grew up playing cello, and finally at 9 years old, they bought me a drum set. And there's nothing else I ever saw myself doing. I didn't even graduate from college. I quit college to play full time. I mean, I tried. I had 2 professorial, erudite parents, and I tried to go that route, but it was just too strong. So I got to tour with some of the greatest musicians and greatest artists on the planet, and it just after a while, after 32 years of doing that, I just have realized as I said, a deeper purpose. So the satisfaction that I gain from speaking in some ways exceeds the satisfaction I was gaining certainly the last 5 years of touring. I mean, I was touring with Pink, and Pink is, the group, probably arguably the greatest female performer on the planet. Yeah. And the people in the band are just extraordinary, just extraordinary musicians. And it was the greatest production. But after a while, it's her show, right? Yeah. I'm there always. I've been, the side mem for everybody. I mean, I played with Foreigner, and I was technically a band member, but I was still playing other people's music, and I was still supporting other people. When I'm speaking, it's mine. Yeah. As I said, I get up there, and everything's on me, man. I'm in front of a corporate audience, and as I said, I need to entertain, engage, inspire, and educate all these people. And it's not, when you're sitting behind a drum set, there's a bit of protection. And I've been doing it for so long that, again, every note matters. And I never took for granted any gig I ever did ever in my life. I just loved it. It's just that there is something greater when you're able to communicate your soul and be able to share these experiences to the benefit of others. And that's what I do. Is music is such a great metaphor for performance in all other fields. So whether it's sales or IT or whatever it happens to be, the metaphor is so great, and people love hearing the stories. That's why they hire athletes and pilots and all these different figures to come and speak outside of their own technical components of what they do, because they have technical speakers, they have the IT speakers and the sales speakers, but they want people like me that are completely removed, so they hear a completely different story. And I always put it back to them. I always, I promote what I call, tapping into everybody's inner rock star, their own rock star DNA. So everybody else feels special, and everybody else feels like they are, they're the rock stars, as opposed to, look how cool Mark is. My goal is to make everybody else feel cool,
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Jeff, let's just talk a little bit about, you do both on stage, virtual, and you have the Hacking the Rockstar Brain package that you can do. Can you talk a little bit about the different add-ons that people can get as far as, speaking?
Yeah. Well, my newest book is called The Attitude Equation. So my expertise, I consider when I'm on stage, is employee engagement, attitude transformation, and team building. My co-writer, Dr. Jim Samuels, has been my mentor for about 35 years. He created the Attitude Formula, which is essentially based on the fact that we can't control what happens to us so much of the time, but at any point in time, you have the power to control, change, or shift your attitude about what is happening to you. Yeah. And it just takes a decision to actually choose an attitude that serves you. Because what's profound about this, and if you really think about it, it's so powerful but so simple, is your attitude is what drives your behavior. And one attitude can drive many behaviors, and your behavior is what determines the consequences or outcomes of your life. So by shifting your attitude, you're literally changing the outcomes of your life. So I talk a lot about, and I show people and demonstrate how they can create attitude shifts, and talk about the power of different attitudes, and how, Cher shifted her attitude, or an attitude I learned from Billy Idol, a story that I tell about him, or a story that I tell about the Foreigner folks, or my experience with Foreigner. And Cher, how Cher nearly died because she got stranded when she got hooked on the truss behind her platform. She was dangling 20 feet in the air. And I thought, tour's over, show's over, and she got off the stage, she was shaking, and I thought, well, that's it. The homegirl doesn't need the money, so it's done. And then 60 seconds later, she runs out onto the stage and says, let's do this again. And she literally performs the most electric performance I'd ever seen her do. And that's what a rock star does. So it's a great demonstration for, the power of attitude when you shift your attitude, because I saw the fear in her eyes. She was shaking and she was escorted off the stage. And, she left all these musicians and dancers on stage without any parental supervision. What was she thinking?
Yeah.
So that's one program. And then my partner who runs my business, who's also my girlfriend, love of my life, Heather, is a neuro coach. Yeah. And we met speaking on the same stage. And, we became very close, obviously, and we started really getting into content, and we realized our content was so similar. What if we were to do something really crazy and do a program, the rock and roll dude and the neuro coach on stage together? So we created Hacking the Rockstar Brain, and now we're morphing that into a program that is statistically based with assessments called the Everyday Rockstar, that's based on 4 neuroscience pillars, but it's still what I call a rock show disguised as a keynote, because it still has the foundation in rock and roll. It's just combining rock and roll with neuroscience, and neuroscience is such a hot topic now. So yeah, we're doing that. And that's another offering. So I'm just constantly evolving. As I said, I just came out with a second book. Now, the Attitude Equation book is based on interviews. So what we did is we interviewed top performers in all fields, everybody from Howie Mandel to Judd Apatow to Grant Cardone to Martina Navratilova to a bunch of my drumming buddies, everybody from Thomas Lang to Antonio Sanchez to Greg Bissonette and Matt Sorum and Rich Redmond. And we interviewed all these people about how attitude has informed both their successes and their failures. And everybody sort of, owned and looked at this formula and agreed that their attitude really was responsible for their behavior, which then did inform the consequences or outcomes of their life. And it's fascinating when you're talking to people in all these walks of life, and we all have that similarity.
Well, you took my next question, so I'm going to move over to the next one. So about the book, but when you're taken on the task of writing a book, were there any areas of your writings that you felt like that were cut that you wish that could have made it into the book, or are there things that I wish I would have added this or that? When it comes to, we talk to many artists that have written books on various things. They always talk about, I left this out and I wish I would have added this, or I wish I would have cut this out. For you, was there any part of that in this book?
Well, what I love about this book is really based on other people's stories. And our editor, Jessie States, is so good and so interactive. At the beginning of each chapter, it says what to look out for specifically, what to pay attention to. And at the end of each chapter are exercises you could do based on what these top performers, these athletes and these business people and these musicians had to say. So the good news is when I first started interviewing, I was talking too much. And so Dr. Jim was like, shut up and listen more. And so I got it very quickly that I just should really, I kind of ask the same questions over and over again, but you're hearing very different answers because you're hearing very different stories. So I'm happy that he recognized that early on. So there wasn't a lot of me, because I really wanted to get their stories and their opinions and their successes and their failures and their pains and their joys. So it's a really fun read because you have a plethora of people from all walks of life talking about their successes and failures and the power of attitude. Mm-hmm. So I don't really feel like I have any regrets. As I said, it's more like I'm happy that Dr. Jim got me early enough to say, hey, man, chill out on talking and just let them talk. Just guide them. So the challenge was to kind of keep everybody on course, because people very easily stray when you interview them. And that's why I'm trying to be very acute with my answers with you, because I have a lot of experience now, both as an interviewer and interviewee.
Oh, very good.
Well, yeah, let's just talk a little bit. Let's take it back to the, being that musician in the backing band. You talked about how, you're that that almost like a hired gun, where it's their songs, their stage performance, and you can see in some of these shows and stuff where they don't have a spotlight on the backing band. It's mostly in the shadows sometimes, or sometimes they will focus in on them in different parts of the songs. But can you talk a little bit about your experience with being in that backing supporting role and doing your best to support that artist?
Well, as I said earlier, well, I didn't actually say this. I realized many years ago that my life is really to be of service, whether it's, having a great conversation with my 14-year-old daughter, or playing drums with an artist and just supporting them in every way that I possibly can, or being on stage giving a speech. So it's an opportunity to really be of service. And the drums, the bass, the guitar, the keyboards, we are literally called the back line. And there's no coincidence to that, because we are the back line supporting the front shiny superstar, the brand, the product up front. So, we Pink acknowledges everybody a lot. But like when I was touring with Cher, by the time I was done working with Cher, she wasn't even introducing anybody anymore. She did at the beginning, but it was all about her, and she was just focusing on. She had a lot to remember, she had all these costume changes and remembering all the dance steps and all the vocals, and there was a lot going on. So I felt honored to be up there with such an icon. She's not even a diva; she's an icon.
Exactly.
So it depends on who you're playing with. With Foreigner felt like a band. That was great. Like, we all really were featured in that sense. But it just depends on with whom you're playing, with whom you're performing, and knowing your position and understanding that. And it's a great metaphor and a great comparison when I'm doing speeches for the IT people that don't get noticed, or the people the first. I did a speech for the first responders, the absolute first responders, the first ones on the call that really get no acknowledgement, because the thing about the first responders, are the first ones that actually show up. And I said, I bet you feel like unsung heroes, right? I said, picture this. Picture being on stage in front of 50,000 people and not one set of eyes is on you. So I understand the value of being completely in support, and I'm honored to be there. I have always been honored to be there. I never felt like my ego was like, hey man, this isn't good enough for me. I never had the luxury of having great success with my own band, but I had the luxury of touring with some of the greatest artists on the planet. So if I can support these fantastic artists, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. That's the way I always looked at it.
Oh, fantastic. Cool. Well, when you're not doing your motivational speaking, you briefly spoke about the Rockers Collective. But can you give our listeners a brief description of the origins of the Rockers Collective? How did it all come about?
Well, it's actually called the All-Star Royal Jam. We're changing our name because the agents are saying that originally Rockers Collective was just that. It was a brainstorm with me and my partner, Steven. Steven's one of my oldest friends, and he's my attorney. And originally the idea was, what rock stars do on their days off. And so we had a staple of like 40 people, and I didn't even play half the gigs. I mean, I had Brian Tishy play, Rich Redmond play, Eric Eldenius come and play, because I was either doing a speaking gig or I was on the road. So it was a collective. Anybody that was available could come in and do the gig. And we started to realize that people want to know who's going to be in the band. So we started kind of limiting it. And, we have basically the band that's kind of dialed in now. And that's why we're changing the name. We're changing the marketing. We're changing the branding. And that's why it's not even Rockers Collective anymore, technically, although, you look up Rockers Collective and it's, I'm looking right now to see if the website, Rockers Collective, the website is still up, but it's got the wrong personnel. So if you look up, I don't know. Maybe I don't even know how to spell it myself. But the point is we have our band kind of dialed in, and and we're going to be getting together and playing together with this particular group of musicians. Because up until now, it's just been like whoever's available, come and play. And, we'd have rehearsals and we'd provide like really high quality entertainment. It just wasn't done. And we still have guest artists that people can hire, Mark McGrath. Mm-hmm. We brought in Kelly Hansen, the singer from Foreigner. We brought in Ann Wilson from Heart. We brought in Mickey Thomas from Starship. So, that's kind of what it's come to, because we really want people to know that they are getting whom they are getting. And now I have a lot more availability. And frankly, a lot of what we're doing is we're offering the band to a lot of my speaking clients. So we're getting more and more gigs from my speaking clients, because they always do big parties afterwards. And if it's a bigger company, they have the budget to be able to hire our band. And our band is like all the greatest musicians. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Obviously without naming any names, what's the largest speaking engagement that you've had?
I spoke for 10,000 people for Remax.
Wow.
That was, I think, the most that I've spoken for. And who else? What other? I did like 8,000 people for Amway. I've spoken for so many of the Fortune 500 companies, from American Express to Crump to Dell to Microsoft twice, to IBM to Kaiser twice, to Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, I have an amazing sort of client list of people that I've spoken for either once or twice,
That's awesome.
Or sometimes even 3 times, depending upon, the space between the speeches. And that's another reason to offer some different speeches. But the Hacking the Rockstar attitude is my flagship. That's my own, the one that I do myself. And Hacking the Rockstar Brain is the one that I do with Heather. Although, as I say, that's sort of our blanket name for a few different programs that we are designing, one of which is the Everyday Rockstar, which we're very excited about. And that's the one that involves statisticians and assessments and, incredibly, 4 pillars of neuroscience and information that we've been using that is, that Harvard Business School is using. And, we're really like upping our game, so to speak.
Fantastic.
So we're very excited about that.
Oh, very cool. I think in your bio, you've also been a producer or audio engineer. Can you talk a little bit about that side of your accomplishments?
Yeah, with my bar mitzvah money, I bought my first 4-track back when there was like 4-track reel-to-reels. And I always produced my bands, and I worked at a bunch of different recording studios as a second engineer, and I took recording classes. And I've been sharing the studio space in Venice, California, with Eric Goebel, who's been an engineer for like some of the greatest acts on the planet, and then Julian Coriel, who's one of the great guitar players on the planet. He's just got off the road with Alanis Morissette. So we've shared a studio space for 20 years now in Venice. And I've done a lot of production, and I just always have drums set up and mic'd, and I do a lot of sessions. And most of the sessions are just independent productions. People find me and they send me tracks, and actually did produce my own DVD called A Day in the Recording Studio, because I wanted people to realize how easy it is, that anybody can do it with just gaining a reasonable amount of education about signal flow, about miking, about charting. And I produced the DVD in 2009, and then Hudson bought it, and now it's on the Hudson site, so you can download it. And it literally has so much content. I stuffed in everything that I do as far as charting and approach to playing and signal path, and Eric, my partner's in it, and we even have a fake fight when it comes to mic technique, and then you see Eric like drinking in the bar. It's kind of, I wanted to be funny and cheeky, and but just chock full of great information, and that's why I did it myself, and then Hudson ended up picking up on it after the fact. So it's great.
Very cool.
I'm very proud of it.
Fantastic. Well, back in 2014, you were voted one of top 3 pop rock drummers by Modern Drummer poll, and then you were also the featured drummer in the May of 2019 issue of Modern Drummer. Now, talk about how humbling is it for you to be acknowledged as one of the top, rock drummers in the moment in the world? How does that feel?
Well, it felt incredibly humbling, and I realized that, I've been touring with some of the greatest artists on the planet. At one point, my friend and the guy who's actually the business coach for the Everyday Rockstar, Dr. Paul Stoltz, who wrote this book that has been trend-setting called The Adversity Quotient. I was hanging out with him, and he was the guy that was the impetus for me to write my first book, Conquering Life Stage Fright. But he asked me a very interesting question. He said, how many people do you think you played for? And this was 12 years ago or something. And I sat down and I realized that I probably performed for over a billion people in my life, between all the TV performances and the live performances. And I thought, holy moly, that's quite a career. That's quite a chance to have inspired a lot of people in my life, with my drumming. And I really have toured and played and done every TV show in every country with one of many artists over the course of many, many years. So I just feel so grateful that I've been in the position to be able to do that. And, I'm not shy, so I've definitely put myself out there. And I've always had this philosophy that someone's got to get the gig. It might as well be me.
There you go.
And, I think Cher was kind of a funny one, because I auditioned for Cher 3 times. The first time I actually had the gig for about an hour. And then they ended up giving it back to their original drummer, Ron Wixow, who's, Ron became a friend of mine. I actually helped Ron get the Cher gig when I left the Cher gig. He was one of Cher's drummers. So, but I joke that I'm going to go on the Guinness Book of World Records for the musician who was auditioned for Cher, more than anybody else. But by the 3rd audition, I realized I can't control the outcome of an audition, but I can control my attitude and how I approach it. So I approach it instead of approaching it like I want to get the gig, I decided to approach it I'm going to have the best time I possibly can and help everybody else have the best time they can, because these poor sods, man, I was number 9 out of 10 drummers. By the time I showed up, these guys looked like zombies. I felt so bad for them. They're playing if I could turn back time, and do you believe, for 10 damn drummers, and let's face it, it's not brain surgery playing Cher songs, Every drummer that was there was totally overqualified for the gig. I just walked in with an attitude I'm going to have as much fun as I possibly can. And at the end of the gig, Paul Merkovich, the MD, who's become a good friend of mine, he's the MD for The Voice now, and he MD Pink as well. We were on the road for years and years. He said, okay, Mark, what do you want to play? And I said, you guys have been here all day. It's not what I want to play. What do you want to play? And Sam Sims was on bass at the time, and he just started jamming. Remember Stanley Clark's School Days?
Yes.
He just started jamming on that from the 70s, and I started jamming with him. And then Dave Barry, the guitar player, has also been on the road with me for years. And then Daryl Smith, the other keyboard player, has also been on the road with me for years. And then Paul, everybody started jamming, and then it happened. Everybody started smiling for the first time the entire audition. Everybody sort of forgot about the audition and the competition, and we actually felt like we were playing like a band and like musicians, and I knew that was the point. And sure enough, I spent the next darn near 20 years on and off playing with Cher, between Cher and Pink and Billy Idol. And at one point I was playing with Billy Idol, Simple Minds, and Foreigner all at the same time.
Wow.
I was a younger man back then.
Yeah.
Well, this is maybe not necessarily a question about you, but I feel like it's an important question to ask. So last year I saw Foreigner live, and there was no original members left. And we interviewed a few years ago, we interviewed Billy Sherwood of Yes, and we had asked him the question about, hey, you know, can these classic bands, these heritage acts, can they survive without ever have any original members left, like a Foreigner, what they're doing now, or it looks like Yes is evolving into a band of non-original members. I know Gene Simmons has spoke about, hey, Kiss can live on without having any original members. So, what is your take on bands still thriving without having any of the original members left?
Well, I will say that this incarnation of Foreigner rocks.
It does.
And when I was in the band, Mick Jones was still in the band. Mick eventually, started bowing out because he had some health issues and he would just come in for very specific gigs. I think it's fine. I think I know that Foreigner had some sort of small print contractual text that says if anybody decides they want their money back because there were no original members, they can get their money back. And I think one person asked for their money back because it really is more about the performance and the entertainment and the songs. And Foreigner was an interesting band because Lou Gramm, I joined Foreigner when Lou was still in the band, and I did, 2.5 years on the road with Lou, and I love Lou, and what a singer and what a guy. But the truth is he was not a big personality. So Kelly is actually a lot more of a bold front man than Lou ever was. Mm-hmm. So people love Kelly, and Kelly sounds like Lou, and Kelly is a trained singer, so he never loses his voice, and he's been in the band for 18 years. I think he's been in the band longer than Lou ever was. So I think it's fine. I think it's more about the quality. It's all about entertainment. And for a band like Foreigner especially, they had 17 top 10 hits, top 40 hits. Mm-hmm. I mean, people just want to hear the songs. So people didn't really know that, Dennis Elliott was the drummer. They might have known Mick Jones. They might have known Lou. But when they come to see the band now, they just want to hear the songs. And this band kills it. Jeff Pilson on bass, Michael Bluestein on keys. Chris Frazier's killing it on drums. I love Chris. And Kelly, it's a great band. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful if bands can continue the legacy because people can still hear the songs. And it's not a tribute band because it's an officially sanctioned group of musicians and, great musicians that have played with amazing people. It's not just a cover band. Right. Jeff Pilson was in Dokken and played with George Lynch. I mean, he's a world-class player. Everybody's world-class. So when you have world-class musicians on stage, whether they're the original members or not, who cares, right?
Yeah, fair enough. I have one last question, and then I'll leave you alone for that. I don't know what Jeff's got cooking over there, but I just felt like, with you being the artist that has performed with some of the biggest names in rock and roll throughout the years, can you talk a little bit more about how the experiences, how has it molded you as the drummer that you have become, and also maybe as the person you are now?
Well, as I said, I pay a lot of attention to success and what breeds success. So I pay a lot of attention to the sort of modus operandi of all of these artists and what I can learn from them. So they've definitely molded me, and they've definitely inspired me, and they've definitely become icons for my stories. And then I can now use them in my stories, and I can now use the experience of having worked with them to inspire other people. So it has had a remarkable effect on who I am as a being and what I'm doing in my career now. And as a person, of course, when you're around world-class people, you can't help but be influenced, right? Right. So I've been playing with world-class artists since I started with Brenda Russell, who's still a friend of mine, and then I went to Richard Marx, and then Dave Koz, who's still a friend of mine, then I joined Foreigner, and then Billy Idol, and I worked with some of the greatest, like one of the greatest Japanese artists, Akichi Yazawa, who's like the McCartney of Japan, and I worked with Udo Lindenberg, who, as a German artist, was the most popular artist of all time. They did a musical about him and a movie about him, and he's also still a friend of mine. These people, when you're around magnificence, when you're around people that have created a magnitude of success, you can't help but be influenced by them. And if you're smart, you study them, and you learn everything that you possibly can. And that's what I've done.
Oh, fantastic.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, is there anything that we left off that you would like to plug or promote?
Wow. Just, feel free to get in touch with me through my website.
Mm-hmm.
If you contact the website, it will eventually get to me. So I like to keep myself accessible as opposed to unaccessible. So I'd rather communicate with people that want to communicate than say, "Oh, I'm too cool for you to communicate with." So I like people to know that they have. I like to be contacted. I love communication. So feel free to check out my website. If you could spell my name, you can find my website. Remember, it's SCHULMAN. It's markschulman.com. And please feel free to reach out. And that's really all I have to say. I just want to help and inspire people as much as I possibly can.
Oh, fantastic.
Any opportunity I get, I'm grateful to be able to do that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, this is how things are going to work. When Jeff, the editing ninja over here, gets this all cleaned up, he's going to take all of my boogers out tonight and make me sound like $1 million. You already sound like $1 million, so you're set. So, but yeah, we'll have it.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Trust me, I don't take any of this for granted, and I'm grateful that you guys contacted me, and I'm honored.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
We appreciate it. Thank you for your time. It was a true honor.
Oh, my pleasure, you guys. Thank you so much. Make sure you email me with your details.
Take care, Mark. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. They roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.